The laughter didn't start loudly. It crept through the auction hall in whispers, side glances, and smirks, the kind that cut deeper than words. A single dad stood alone at the edge of a grand room filled with chandeliers, tailored suits, and generational wealth, holding on to the last fragile thing he owned that still felt like hope. He didn't belong there, and everyone knew it. They mocked him without speaking, judged him without knowing, and decided his worth before the auctioneer even lifted the gavel. None of them imagined that before the night ended, a woman in red would change his life forever with a single, shocking bid. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories where quiet goodness finally wins, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that remind us what humanity still looks like. He was a single father long before he was ever an artist in anyone's eyes. Life had pressed him down early, not with one great tragedy but with 1,000 small ones. His wife had died young, leaving behind silence in the house and a little girl who woke up crying every night, calling for a mother who would never answer. He learned to braid hair with trembling hands, to cook meals on a budget that never stretched far enough, and to smile through exhaustion because his daughter needed to believe her world was still safe. Painting was never meant to be a career. It was something he did late at night after she fell asleep, when the house finally stopped echoing with loss. A brush was cheaper than therapy, and a canvas listened without judgment. The painting he brought to the auction was born on one of the hardest nights of his life. Rain had poured relentlessly outside his small apartment, leaking through a crack in the ceiling as bills lay unopened on the table. His daughter had asked him a simple question earlier that day, one that shattered him quietly from the inside: why didn't everyone have someone to protect them? That question stayed with him as he painted, shaping every stroke. On the canvas, a man stood in the rain holding an umbrella over a small child, shielding her while letting himself get soaked. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. But it was honest. It carried every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every promise he had made to never let his child feel alone. When he arrived at the auction hall, his jacket was borrowed, slightly too big at the shoulders, still smelling faintly of someone else's cologne. His shoes were worn, cleaned carefully but unable to hide the cracks of time. Around him stood collectors who spoke fluently about investments and trends, people who saw art as numbers waiting to multiply. They glanced at his painting and dismissed it instantly. Some smiled politely. Others didn't bother hiding their amusement. To them, it was sentimental, naive, and out of place among million-dollar masterpieces. To him, it was his life. As the auction began, bids flew effortlessly for famous names and abstract pieces no one pretended to understand. The room buzzed with confidence and entitlement. When his painting was finally presented, the energy shifted. The auctioneer announced it with a neutral tone, but the crowd responded with silence thickened by judgment. A few low bids were thrown out, almost as jokes, amounts that wouldn't cover a month of his rent. Each one landed like a reminder of where he stood in their world. His hands shook, not from fear of rejection, but from the weight of knowing that if the painting didn't sell, he had nothing left to fall back on. That was when she stood up. The woman in red had been seated quietly near the front, her presence commanding without effort. She didn't speak loudly or rush to be noticed. Her red dress wasn't flashy, it was elegant, deliberate, impossible to ignore. She had watched the entire auction without expression, studying not just the art, but the people behind it. When she raised her hand, the room shifted in confusion. Then the number came out, and the hall froze. 50 million. For a moment, no one breathed. People laughed nervously, assuming they had misheard. Others turned to see if this was some elaborate performance or mistake. But she remained standing, calm and unwavering. The auctioneer repeated the bid, his voice suddenly unsure, and the silence stretched longer, heavier. No one challenged it. No one dared. The gavel fell, echoing through the hall like a thunderclap. The single dad didn't understand what was happening at first. His mind rejected the reality because it hurt less to believe this was another cruel joke. But then he saw the way the woman looked at the painting, not as an asset, but as a story. She wasn't buying brushstrokes. She was honoring a truth that the room had mocked. In that moment, the laughter died completely. The same people who had dismissed him now avoided his eyes, confronted with the ugliness of their assumptions. The woman in red later explained her reason in a way that never needed dialogue to feel powerful. She had grown up unseen, raised by a father who gave up everything to protect her, to stand in the rain so she wouldn't have to. The painting wasn't art to her. It was memory. It was gratitude. And it was proof that love, when expressed honestly, carries more value than reputation or fame ever could. The money didn't just change his bank account. It changed his posture, his breathing, the way he held his daughter when he told her that things were going to be okay. He paid off debts that had haunted him for years. He moved them into a home where rain stayed outside. He funded art programs for children who used creativity to survive pain, just like he had. But more than that, he kept painting. Not for validation, not for auctions, but because he finally understood that his voice mattered. The world didn't become kinder overnight, but his place in it became firmer. He was no longer invisible. He was proof that sincerity still had power, that love expressed quietly could shake rooms built on arrogance. And somewhere, in a gallery filled with priceless works, his painting hung not as a trophy, but as a reminder that the most valuable things are often the ones we almost overlook. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of sacrifices made for love or moments when kindness showed up unexpectedly, please take a second now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can find their way into the world. Before this story ends, leave a comment telling us what this painting meant to you, or who in your life has stood in the rain so you could stay dry. Because sometimes, the world laughs at quiet goodness, until one brave soul stands up and reminds everyone what real value looks like.